All right, there we go. All right, welcome back for, I believe this is our second reading night and our fourth night overall, third night overall. Very much appreciate you braving the weather and coming out here. If you're watching online, make sure you sign in on the right-hand side. There should be a comment stream where you can comment. Just make sure you put your name that you are watching now, and then at the end, make sure you say that you were signing out so I know that you watched the whole thing. So tonight we're going to be going over a bunch of different things. We're going to be reviewing the benchmark, which we had taken back in the end of January. And then from there, we'll be talking about different skills, including cause and effect, fact and opinion, and reading for details. So as usual, this is going to help you guide your child in reviewing reading quizzes and hopefully helping them to recognize their mistakes so they don't make them in the future. Again, always feel free to take notes. It is available on my website because you're watching it on my website currently. And we're going to be going over concepts and tips, questions, and journals. We have questions about strategy afterwards. All right, so if we go over our benchmark review, couple of things to look at. The class average was a 70%, which is a little bit lower than our first benchmark. Our first benchmark class average was a 77, so they did drop a little bit. Some things to kind of celebrate. One skill that they really had a hard time with on the first benchmark was different word skills, which kind of goes with synonyms, antonyms, context clues, multiple meaning words. If we look through the breakdown, synonyms, everybody got that question right. There's a multiple meaning words, 91% of the class got it right. And but so overall they had improved in that one, and that's one skill we've really been targeting since the first benchmark. One thing to really make a note of is that it becomes very clear that test fatigue had a huge impact on it, because if you look at the first story, which was a fiction story, pretty much you see no red, which is what you want to be seeing. You don't want to see a lot of red in that column. When you get to the second story, you see two things of red. And then when you get to the third story, you see a lot of red and a lot of orange. So you kind of see as the stories go on, they basically get tired. It becomes a little bit harder for them. That was the first time they had taken 3 stories in a row, other than the first benchmark. We had, up until that point, been doing 2 stories in a row. We are now at 3 stories in a row because every advisory has had another story to their weekly quizzes. Another thing to look at, they did significantly better on fictional stories than nonfiction stories. The first 2 stories were fiction stories. The first story was a story about a family going on a picnic. The second story was about a wolf, not a wolf, a fox providing a new home for their family. And the third story, which was a nonfiction story, was kind of an overview of Amelia Earhart's life. So the picnic story, obviously very relatable. You've probably gone on a picnic at some point in your life. The fox story, they've probably grown up with Disney movies about foxes and the Hound and all those kind of things. Not many students might not have heard of Amelia Earhart, so that kind of puts them at a disadvantage not having that background knowledge. We do a lot of nonfiction stories because traditionally that is where the students struggle with more. So you'll notice that the reading quizzes now are generally going to go more towards the nonfiction angle. There will still be some fiction. There will be some columns where we're going to start hitting nonfiction a little bit more harder, because that's a little bit harder to prepare for, because if you don't have a background knowledge of that thing in the nonfiction, you're kind of at a disadvantage to begin with. So I figured if I kind of blanket them with a lot of background knowledge, hopefully some of that will stick when it comes time for this as well. So test fatigue, really the only way that we can improve that is to get them in the habit of doing it, which is the whole basis of why I increased the stories throughout the advisory or throughout the school year. Because at the end of the year, there will be on the SOL, I believe last year was 9 stories. I'm not really going to throw 9 stories at them as a weekly reading quiz. That would literally take the whole day. I mean, the SOL did take the entire day last year. But by the end of before the SOLs, we'll be at 4 or 5 stories depending. But this is a pretty good predictor of your child's overall ability in reading, because whereas the math benchmark, where we had that big issue of not having long division mastered at that point, this kind of was all the skills that we've been working on all year. So you can kind of take this thing and kind of correlate it to your child's results and see what skills they're specifically struggling with. And really, reading a lot of nonfiction is going to be the only way to get better nonfiction. So that's benchmark review. hopefully these classes will help for the third benchmark and just those weekly reading quizzes get better at it in general. So the first skill we're going to be working on tonight is cause and effect. And basically what I tell the students is for cause and effect, the cause is the why something happens, and the effect is what happens. And they kind of get to mix up the actual terms, which one goes with which, because technically speaking, the cause is also what happens, but which is kind of what I go on, and I tell them to ask themselves what happens first. So that if it gives them a sentence, ask what happened. And they can pick either, for example, in this bike one, they can say, the bike became rusty because it was left in the rain. So if they say what happened, maybe they pick the bike becomes rusty. So then if they want to say that that's the effect, I tell them, why did that happen? So what happened, the bike became rusty, why did that happen? It was left in the rain. On the flip side, if they ask themselves what happened, they said, it was left in the rain, I would say, why did that happen? If they ask themselves why did that happen, and only thing else is in that sentence is the bike became rusty, doesn't make sense. The bike leaving it just doesn't make sense. I can't even figure out how to formulate to make that sound like it makes sense. So a lot of times they have to ask themselves what happened and then why it happened. I know it's called cause and effect, but really have to think of it as effect and then cause. There are a lot of clue words that are going to kind of convince or not clue the students into knowing that it's going to be a cause and effect thing. Those include so, that, since, because, pretty much if they see because, it's going to be related to cause and effect. If, reason, as a result. A lot of questions that ask why are also going to be a cause and effect question. One of the biggest common mistakes is thinking that the cause always has to come first and the effect always comes second because it is called cause and effect. They get in their head that cause comes first, effect comes second, but in this sentence particularly, the effect came first and then the cause. And then the other thing is looking immediately before or immediately after what happened, because they have in their mind that cause and effect is always going to be immediately there. In first advisory, we had taken a quiz about specifically about cause and effect. It was the front story was about Hershey Kisses. You could have seen it. And a lot of times, like the question, helpful I had this with me, but it said like the cause was the kisses made a certain kiss-like noise on the conveyor belt. So then they would go back in the story and they would look, and I think right before it, because they were looking for the cause, which they think comes first, talk about how the machines were made, which doesn't really make sense. So the effect of having it make a kiss-like noise is that they start calling them Hershey Kisses. So that's, they always need to know, they really asking themselves what happened and why it happened, or vice versa, is going to really get them around that barrier. And just not locking themselves into thinking that cause always has to come first, effect always has to come second, or the cause is always going to be found immediately after or before. Sometimes they have to think about it in general. So on a test, cause and effect questions are going to be worded in a couple different ways. First one's going to be why did the character do whatever the character did. It's going to be pretty straightforward. They just need to find why they did that. Right there, the why is being a keyword there. And then what happened because, blah, 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 blah. That would give the first one is asking for the cause. They would be providing the effect, and then they'd have to find the cause. The second one, what happened because, that would be giving them the cause, and then they have to find the effect. One way that they're going to see this on the SOL is going to be like this. This is actually these are called technology enhanced items, which you should have probably heard of them at some point in third grade, because I did use these on third grade. We've been using these in my class, and I'll get into that after explaining this. Basically, it's going to give them what's called a cause and effect box, where it's either going to give them the cause, like it'll have writing there, and then the effect, and then it's going to give them about 4 choices. They have to actually physically drag one of these into the box. Or in this case, I gave them the effect, and they had to drag one of the causes. These technology enhanced items, this is completely unrelated to cause and effect, but this is going to help them overall. These technology enhanced items are, on face value, they're pretty easy because it's just kind of taking a standard question and just putting it into a different format. But if the students don't have exposure to this, they're not going to really understand when they get to the SOL, oh, I'm supposed to drag things. We'll also, I don't remember if we get to it on this one or if it'll be on another night. Sometimes these technology enhancements will have more than one answer, and it won't tell them how many answers, so they have to kind of get themselves out of the habit of thinking there's only one answer. I've made a lot of these on Google Drive, excuse me, and as we take our reading quizzes on Friday, they have the Chromebooks in front of them, and they actually are manipulating these, so they're practicing this now so it doesn't come up to them as a surprise at the end of the year. There are practice items available on the Department of Education's website that they can actually go on and manipulate these. If you have a Google Drive account, I'm more than happy to share these with you, and then you can kind of make them up yourself. Just send me an email with whatever you have your Google Drive set up, and I'll share them. I shared them to every teacher in the county already, so I can share them to you. But it's pretty straightforward. Well, we're not taking a reading quiz tomorrow because of all the snow. But next week, I've already made. We're going to take 3 stories, and they're going to have about 6 technology enhanced questions of different types, just to start preparing. I made 20 different templates between reading and math, and that covers the gambit of every possible thing that they're going to see on the SWL. So it's just going to prepare them for the technology enhancements. Getting back to cause and effect now. This is an example from the benchmark. This comes from the very first story, the one about going on a picnic. And it said, why did the Berry family leave the first picnic site? Obviously, we can see the class did very well on this. 91% of the class got that correctly. That answer is found right here. They left the campsite or picnic site right here. They said, let's keep going for a while. And in this case, it was immediately before. There's no water for your children to wait in. So they chose that correctly. That was also the first answer. J, where 9% of the class has chosen it, that was why they had left the second picnic site. If we go down here, it says, let's try to find a place where Rex is going to run. Earlier in the story, it tells you Rex is the dog. So that kind of ties a little bit of cause and effect questions into sequencing questions as well. And as we kind of go through this tonight, you're going to see a lot of the different skills we've talked about, or we'll talk about, or are talking about tonight, kind of all tie themselves together. So overall, on that one, the very first story, that was question number 2. So hopefully, test fatigue has not set in by question number 2 yet. They did very well now. Now, these were questions 21, 22, 23. These were on the second story about the fox. So this was about the midpoint of the test, and on the first question, 73% of the class chose the correct answer, which would be found in this one. It says the silent fox knew her family would be unnoticed, hidden in the furthest and darkest corner of the barn. So it said it was hard to see the kids in the barn, which would be the effect. Why was it hard to? Because they stayed in a dark corner. So it's found directly here, not necessarily the exact wording, but very close. As I'm looking through these, kind of hard. Sometimes I can pick out why students picked answers. Sometimes it's very hard to figure out why the students picked that answer. The farmer's lantern was out. The only time it talks about the farmer's lantern being out is toward the end of the story when it falls off the wall and sets the barn on fire. So kind of hard to understand why they would have chosen that. Same thing with J. There was nothing in the story that had said anything about them hiding behind a mother fox. It's a reasonable thing to think, but nothing in the story says that. That one's pretty much cause and effect. In that one, they're supplied with the effect, and they have to find the cause. And in the second one, also I need to point out, this is a little bit easier going through it on here because A, obviously we're older than them, and B, I'm only giving you the specific parts of the passage that you need to understand the question. They have a much longer passage. I believe this one was about 12 paragraphs total. So there were 2 paragraphs after this and 5 that have preceded this. So I kind of condensed it down just to what you need. They have to look through the whole thing, but using their scanning abilities, they should be able to pick up on what paragraph they need. And normally they do. Sometimes, for whatever reason, they just want to talk about hiding behind a box. On the next question, 21, it had talked about the farmer smiled where he saw the fox and her kids because. This question, not only was it a cause and effect, this was also an inference because 73% of the class understood that the farmer smiled when he saw the fox had howled because the fox howls to try to get the farmer to come in and put out the fire that the barn is on. Yeah, the other one, 18% of the students who chose B. Again, this was kind of hard to figure out where they had gotten that from because nothing in the passage had indicated that he felt that the foxes were his pets. Last year, a lot of my class had chosen B, knew the fox would protect his cows, which is also a reasonable thing because he's not necessarily protecting from predators, but protecting from things that's going on in the barn. And it's looking funny, doesn't say anything about the farmer thinking the kids look funny. That maybe they pick up on smile and funny kind of go along together. But that one is cause and effect question. Again, it gives them the effect being he smiled. They have to figure out why he smiled, but they had to kind of make an inference. It doesn't really say exactly why. Here, all it says right here is, these paragraphs talk about the fox howling and then coming in, and he puts out the fire. Here it says the farmer smiled. So they kind of have to think again beyond the text line back to our skill from last time, the inference, to figure out why they had, the farmer had a smile. Final question here. Only about 55% of the class had gotten that one right, which is just over half. Why did the mother fox howl at the farmer? So that one gave them, again, the effect. They had to find cause. That one I felt was one of the easier questions because the farm was on fire, and she was the whole story talks about how she had been very protective of her baby. They also make a point in the beginning of the story of saying that she was kind of hiding from the farmer because she knew the farmer didn't wanted to, I think the farmer killed her husband or fox or whatever. So it's not really reasonable for the students to have thought that she wanted to let the farmer know, unless if it would have said, let the farmer know that the family was in the barn and needed to put the fire out, that would make more sense, but just leaving it at that. Did not like foxes. Doesn't really make sense why the fox would try to howl at him if she knew he doesn't like foxes. And there's nothing to indicate that she was angry with the farmer. So that one, these three questions was a very hard time to try to figure out why they had chosen their different answers. I kind of chalked it up half to test fatigue. So this was over the halfway point. I believe there are 38 questions, so they're over halfway, and they were kind of a little bit higher level thinking. But really, if they think about it, some of these make a little bit of sense. They just have to ask themselves, why did they do that? And go back and look at the story. So different ways to practice cause and effect. When you're reading with your child, this is pretty easy. You just ask them why something happened or what happened because of something else. So if you're reading, if you're reading Chuck Fever, he got spots on him. Why did he get spots on him? Because he eats too much chocolate. If you're reading George Washington Socks, they got on the boat. Why and what happened when they got on the boat? They traveled back in time. So I just spoiled that for you. But so you can that's pretty easy to do. You can also use your daily routine to do this. You can just say, you seem really tired this morning. Why is that? So you're giving them an effect. You're asking them what caused that. So they stayed up late. And then you can flip that around. You studied really hard for your Civil War test tomorrow. What will probably happen? So that's giving them the cause. They need to get the effect. The effect is that they're going to get 100% on the test tomorrow. So that's just a really easy way to practice cause and effect. Next one is going to be fact and opinion. And fact and opinion is a skill that, for whatever reason, is tricky to students. The way that we define facts and opinion is fact is something that you can prove it true or false by researching it. I tell them if you can look up an encyclopedia, the internet, someone who knows a lot of things, like a scientist or something, that's a fact. It doesn't necessarily need to be a true fact. Like sometimes it will tell them something wrong, but they can look at it, they can prove it true or false, or it doesn't need to be something that they know. We'll get back to that about the something they know. The opinion is a feeling word, or I'd say that if it's a feeling word or you can't prove it, that's going to make it an opinion. So the big difference between fact and opinion is fact you can prove, opinion you cannot prove. Sometimes, a lot of the times, the students will say things are opinions just because they don't know if it's true or not. When we did a fact and opinion activity at the beginning of the year, and I had done this activity with my student teaching, I basically wrote a little research report about the Diary Kid series, and I looked at how much money the whole series, including the movies and everything, had made. And it was more money than I've ever seen in my life. But I told them how much money it had made. I asked, is that a fact or opinion? And overwhelmingly amount of them told me that it was an opinion. And I said, why is that an opinion? And they said, well, I don't know that that's true. And so I stopped the lesson and I went on the internet and I looked up how much money it had made. And I had made that report a couple years ago, so the detail was a little bit out of date. But I said, was I able to go look that up? They said, yeah. And I said, so is that a fact or opinion? And they said, that's the fact now, because I was able to look it up. But on the flip side, if I said, like, the first book in the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series is the best book, you can't prove that. Might have gotten a lot of good reviews. Some people might like it. On the flip side, might have gotten bad reviews. Some people might not have. So you can't really look up something that is best, something that is worst. Different feeling for that. Or alternatively, they can say that it's a fact just because they agree with it. So if they go back to the Diary of a Wimpy Kid example, if I say the first book is the best, they might say that's a fact just because they agree with it. I tell the students that Mr. B is the best teacher. I tell them that's a fact because that's true. But then other students will say, no, that's not a fact, and so then I'll send them to the office. But I tell them that if you can look it up, it's a fact. If you can't look it up, it's not.
You gotta say the best fourth grade male teacher. Maybe you got it.
True. I like to just say best overall, and I think that's still a fact. So common mistakes here, not asking if it can be researched. That's basically the best determination. If you can research it, it's going to be fact. If you can't research it, it's going to be fact. And another thing is seeing it in the passage, just automatically assuming that it's fact. We're going to go over an example of that specifically. Just because it says something like, I'll come back to that. But just because it says it in the passage doesn't necessarily make it a fact. And that'll become clear on one more slide after this. So facts and opinion questions are going to be worded in three main ways on tests. The first one is going to be which of the following is a fact or opinion in the past from the passage, and the other one's just going to be the flip side of that, which one is not a fact or opinion. Not and accept are going to be two words that are going to throw them off entirely because, and we're trying to get them to pick up on it, that not is a word you need to circle, you need to highlight, you need to remember that. Basically, those are pretty straightforward questions. It's not going to be misleading. It's just going to ask them which is a fact. One way that I know they had seen last year, and they have a version of this on the Department of Education website, and this is from our quiz from last week, it's going to give them four statements, about four statements. They're going to choose if it's either fact or opinion. So the first one, Harriet Tubman was a slave. That's a fact. You can prove that. So they would drag that fact thing there. Harriet Tubman was very brave. Can't really prove that. Some people might think she's brave, like the abolitionists might think she's brave. The plantation owners might not feel the same way. So that would be an opinion because you can't really prove that one way or another. Harriet Tubman helped over 300 slaves escape to freedom. It's a fact. You can look that up. Harriet Tubman is the most important abolitionist. You can't prove that. Some people might think John Brown, some people might think Nat Turner, and these are all people that they need to know for their testimony. So these are, they're going to see it like this. This is, they've already taken this quiz. That's the only reason I'm comfortable putting these up. But last year on the SOL, they might see it like this without a story. Like they might say up here, you do not need a story to answer this question. It's just going to give them four statements, and they have to figure out if it's a fact or opinion. And so it's like baseball on a baseball field is 18 people. I don't actually even know how many people on a baseball field. But that would be a fact. And then it says baseball is the most entertaining sport. That would be an opinion. They see clue words like brave, that's an opinion word, important, best, most, worst, all those kind of different words. That's going to be an opinion. All right. This is the one that I was referring to. Which statement is not a fact from the story? So this is twofold here. One, it says not, so they need to pick up on the word not. So basically asking not a fact is just a fancy way of asking for an opinion. Now, the thing that they struggled with here is all 4 of these sentences are in the passage. You can see Mr. and Mrs. Berry and the 3 children walked out the front door. It's right there. But there is no water for you children to wait in. It's right there. Here's a nice place or spot. It's right there. And out they went looking for a picnic spot right there. So they could just rely on looking back in the passage and trying to find which sentence wasn't there. What they had to do was kind of ask themselves, can you prove that? So, Mr. and Mrs. Berry and the 3 children walked out the front door. Can we prove that? Yeah, it says right there. They walked out the front door. If this were a real thing, you could see them walk out their front door. There's no water for you children to wait in. They could get out a map. They could look and see that there's no water in that picnic area. Here's a nice place. Well, Mr. Berry might think it's a nice place, and the mother didn't think it was a nice place. So you can't really prove that that's a nice place or not a nice place. And when they went for a picnic spot, it's right there. You can prove that they went. So while all of these answers are directly in the passage, they can't rely on just looking which one's in the passage. They have to ask themselves, can that be proven? You can't really prove if something's nice. What might be nice to somebody might not be nice to someone else. That's basically, again, going back to the can you prove that is going to be the only way that they can determine if it is a cause or not cause factor opinion. So again, here, which statement is an opinion about Amelia Earhart? Plane was never found. Amelia Earhart got many awards. In 1930, Amelia Earhart set 3 world records. America is still in love with Amelia Earhart. Again, all these statements appear in here. Plane was never found is down there. Amelia Earhart got many awards. Right there. In 1930, Amelia Earhart set 3 world records. Right there. And America is still in love with Amelia Earhart. Right there. So they could have just relied on going back to the passage and find it. Because if they did that, they would find all 4 answers. Plane was never found. I mean, you can prove that. They still have, to the best of my knowledge, they still have not found the plane. Amelia Earhart got many awards. The thing, as I was looking through this, what might have tripped them up was the fact that they said many awards, because some students' different idea of many awards might be different than others. So I can kind of see how they would pick that, but again, that would kind of be on a border on a good answer, not necessarily the best answer. In 1930, Amelia Earhart set 3 world records. That's pretty, I mean, that pretty much tells you right in there. America is still in love with Amelia Earhart. That one is the most of an opinion, but even though B kind of is an opinion, B is the better opinion, because again, going back to the fact that a lot of the students before reading this never even knew who Amelia Earhart was. Clearly they weren't in love with Amelia Earhart before they read this. It might be after, but you can't say that America is still in love with it if that's not true worldwide. So again, going back to themselves and asking that, is that true? Can you prove that? That's going to be the only way to really determine if that's your opinion. So a couple of different ways to practice this, and I just thought of another one as I was going through this, so I'll show you guys in a second. While you're reading with your child, just ask them if something that they read is a fact or opinion, and then explain to you why they thought that. This is going to be significantly easier to do with nonfiction, because nonfiction, you can kind of look it up, you can kind of prove it. If you're doing this with fiction, you can still do it, but you kind of have to abide by the rules of that universe. I use an example of Harry Potter, saying something like Hermione passed the Expelliarmus charm by saying whatever it was. While that might sound strange to some of you particularly, that's true. That is how you kind of do that. But if you say Hermione is the best wizard, that's subjective. You can't really prove that. So if you're doing it with fiction, it's going to be a little bit harder to do because you have to kind of abide by the rules of that universe. Nonfiction, they are going to see it with both fiction and nonfiction. You always need to remind them that they don't need to know it for it to be a fact. They just need to be able to research it. So going back to the diagram example, they didn't really know how much money the whole series made, but they could find it out. You can't find out which one is the best. You can't find out which one's the worst. Everybody's going to be a little bit different on that. Pointing at clue words, if they're struggling with anything like best, worst, basically any adjective is going to kind of give it away that it's a opinion, other than things like color words. Those are kind of going to be fact. But pretty much any feeling word, feeling adjective is going to kind of show that it's an opinion. And you can just have your family members say things and try to update fact or opinion. So you can say, like, one of the sisters can say, I'm the oldest sister. That's a fact. You can look at birth records or whatever. You can say, I'm the smartest sister. Can't really prove that. You could kind of get into the issue of grades, but then you can try to make this a nice, rewarding experience. The way that I had just thought of that we're going to be doing in class in a little bit, this is another quick and easy game you can make. They played this with a math today. What you do is you get a bunch of popsicle sticks and you just write things on here. So for instance, I have an apple for you. That would be a fact. You can look at the person and that. So let's see if we can put an opinion on it. Cats are lovely. That is an opinion. Some people might think cats are lovely. Some people might think cats are not lovely. They would be wrong. So then the way you turn this into a game, you also put one stick or a couple sticks. I put 4 per can that say kaboom on them. And what they get to do is they get to keep every stick that they get correct. If it's a fact or opinion, they pick a kaboom, they have to put it all back in. I did it with decimals and multiplication facts today. The kids really liked it. You can actually even double side these. So this side has fact or opinion ones. These ones have synonym, antonym. So they have to get both sides to do it if they want to keep the stick. That's just a fun and easy way. This takes significantly less time to make them versions, especially if you have students like before you after they don't do this. So those are different, just kind of fun ways to practice different skills. You can really do that with any skill. Fact and opinion. CauseEffect, you could even do that with. You could try to cram a little sentence on one of those. I'd recommend doing the bigger crest sticks. But yeah, you can do that. And they know how to play kaboom because they started playing it with math today. So if you make their own kaboom can or their own power, they'll like that. Farron told me you guys got Dixie cups maybe already. Yeah, so she came in this morning.
Not anything with that, but we could get the
It's a start. All right, final skill for today is going to be reading for details. And this is basically the opposite of main idea, which we had stressed a lot in the last reading night, where the main idea kind of wants them to think of the overall big picture of the story. Details are going to get to very specific, often over-the-top specific different details. Generally speaking, a lot of these questions are going to be very literal in the fact that they can find it in the passage. Common mistakes is going to be not looking back. And we're going to go through this, and it was very frustrating going through this because all of the questions that I'm going to show you, you could find the answers directly in the passage. It wasn't they had to make an inference, they didn't have to make cause and effect. It was directly in the passage. All they had to do was go back and look. And that shows me that you didn't. And that's really the only way that they're going to get better is actually go back and look. Not reading carefully, that kind of goes along with not going back. Not focusing on what the question asks, and in that, I mean not paying attention to the word not accept. For reading for details, it's going to basically ask them, we'll see examples, all of these are reasons this happened, except, or this the reason that they did not do something is this. So not or except, I try to get them to highlight it, to circle it, all that kind of stuff. So detailed questions are going to be worded in a variety of different ways. What was the character doing when the other character was doing something? Pretty straightforward. You find what other character was doing, and then you look for what the original character was doing. You can look up at the passage, find that directly. All the following are reasons that they did this, except. So there's your except right there. You just need to look for all of the answers, and whichever one you can't find is the correct answer. Which of the following was not a reason he did this? Not being keyword there. Again, find all the reasons they did it. Whichever one you can't find is the right answer. What was special or different about X? You just need to go through the answers, find which ones are special. According to the passage, the reason they did this was blah, 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 and which question is not answered in this passage or paragraph. So it's going to give them 4 different questions, and they're going to have to figure out which one could not be answered in one paragraph. All right. So these are some other ways that they will see detailed questions. This is one I was talking about, one of the technology enhanced items, that this one, on the as well, they'll be able to just click on these boxes and they'll hide. The way I made it was I just saved the drag stars. This one they have to choose every one that is true based on the passage. This is from last Friday's reading quiz, and there were 6 possible choices, and I gave them 6 possible. They could choose up to 6 things, or they could choose 0. They could pick anything between it. Very hard for them to, because I mean, in school they've been brought that there's pretty much one correct answer, but then these technology enhanced items throws a whole monkey wrench into the thing, and now they can pick up to 6 answers. They can pick no answers. I think they generally have to pick at least 1 answer. So, for this specific one, Harriet Tubman escaped using it and helped other slaves. That was a true detail. Slaves escaped on the Underground Railroad. That was true. It was not a dangerous place. It's false. It was a very dangerous place. It was underground. That's not true. There was kind of trails. They used trains. One thing I'm trying to get them to realize that the Underground Railroad was not an actual railroad. So that was not true. And it was made up of paths in the wood. So there were 3 correct answers there. I could have made it 6 correct answers. I could have made it 2, however many I wanted. That's something that used to. This one, this comes from a release SOL. They are going to see a question that is formatted similar to this on next Friday's reading quiz. I didn't include the actual question because I didn't want you guys to see the question before they take it. Especially because I know some of us in the audience got excited about that.
Where's the trust?
So what they'll have to do here is they can kind of give them, the title is basically the main idea, and then a bunch of details. So for this one, ways Egyptians kept cool, they're given 3 details. They have to figure out which detail is correct. What they're actually going to see this on the SOL, how they're actually going to see it on the quiz next Friday, is they're going to be given this, and I'm going to have them identify both the main idea of the list. I'm going to give them 2 details related in the list. They have to figure out what the main idea of the list is, and which 2 details would also go with that list. That kind of combines main idea and detail. That's going to be one of those technology enhanced items where they're going to have to drag things around. So as you can see, detailed questions are going to come in all shapes and sizes, but they're all basically asking the same thing. And as long as they identify what the question's asking, really no excuse to get any of these wrong. So this one, we can see all of the reasons the family picnic in the backyard, all our reasons the family picnic in the backyard, except. And so these are the 2 paragraphs related to them picnic on the backyard. So all they had to do was go through and see which one was there. So pond for fishing, if they're scanning through, I didn't see anything about pond, but they have to still prove their work that they can find it. So trees for shade, literally like the 6 word, trees for shade. So seeing it's except they could choose that one. Small creek for wading. Small creek for wading, it's right there. Picnic table for eating. Picnic table was all set up. So really, I mean, overall they did pretty well in that 73%. That's most of the class on for fishing, really. And like I showed you, all they had to do was look at it. This next one goes to the fox story, which was the second story. Which was the fawn was not a reason the mother fox found a home for her kids. Again, a non up here was except. This came from our benchmark, so this was helpful. The fact that it's they basically pointed out to them, except being all capitals at source brand, not being italicized. That brings attention to them. On the SOL, I don't remember if it's going to be bolded or italicized, truth be told. So they just need to make sure that they're looking for that themselves. So what they had to do here was they had to figure out which one was in the passage. So Ness would let in the snow. Right here, Ness would surely let in the snow. Farmer made a place for them. Nothing about the farmer. And the overall main idea of that story happens to be that the farmer doesn't want them to be there. Predators would easily find the kits. Predators to find the babies when the mother had left to search for food. Very surprising that about a quarter of the class had chosen that one, especially because it says predators right there, predators right there. They basically just need to clue on those 2 words. The only thing that I can think that would have thrown them off was that it says babies there and it says kids there, but the story doesn't want to explain that kids is another word for baby foxes, but that's the only reason. And 2 bolts for the kids in the forest. Freezing storms came. So freezing is another word that indicates cold. So again, all they had to do was look back there, and we can see some of the class did, some of the class did. here, same kind of thing. What was special about Amelia's flight from Hawaii to California in 1935? So what I tell them to do when they're reading a question, this one's easy because it has no not, it has no except. It's just a very straightforward question. Pick up on something like keywords to scan for. So Hawaii, California, 1935, those are all keywords that these students scan for. So if they scan for Hawaii, California, they're scanning Hawaii to California, and longer trip than the one that gets us across the Atlantic, which is the correct answer, and it's right there. Plane had a new design. I reread the whole passage last night, or whenever, a couple nights ago when I was making this, and I don't recall seeing anything about plane having a new design in here. So I don't know why they would have chosen that one. Plane flew higher than it had ever done before. Again, that wasn't anywhere in the passage for them to have possibly chosen that. And the flight ended with a warm welcome with thousands of people. The thousands of people were waiting for the plane to arrive. That was in something that was from a previous flight. So what they did there, they found what was special about a flight, but not that specific flight. You'll see that these questions are going to be very detailed, very specific for them for looking for the one thing. But Hawaii to California, as long as they're scanning for the keywords, they might have seen Hawaii to California and just kind of scanning around. They said thousands of people, so they kind of picked that. So it's very important that they're reading very carefully for details. Last one. This was one of the very last questions. I believe there were like 38 questions, so this is nearing the end. According to the article, the challenge Amelia faced on her last trip was she had to. So in this one, a new speed record didn't say anything about that. Make preparations in a short time. Didn't really say anything about that. It does talk about stopping several times for gasoline right there, but if you go read on a little further, it does say the next part of the trip was the most difficult because Amelia had to find a small island in the Pacific Ocean. So while it was different that she had to stop numerous times, the thing that is most challenging is that she had to find a small island in the Pacific Ocean, which is, I believe, how she goes on. But so that one, they had to make sure a thing that could pose a problem there is the fact that it says challenge there and difficult there. So the fact that they're not using the direct words, even though they mean basically the same thing, kind of poses a problem sometimes. So that one, but again, if they were reading carefully, looking back for details, really no reason to get that one wrong. All right, so this one, this is kind of the opposite of that one. So that one, it was kind of asking for details. This one's going to give them 4 questions. What I tell them for these, when it says which question is not answered in paragraph 4, I tell them, if it gives you a question, just write an answer at the end. I mean, right here it says, what year did Amelia, or first of all, it says paragraph 4, so they should have gone back to paragraph 4. So, what year did Amelia set her world speed records? And right here, Amelia Earhart set 3 world speed records. So all they have to do right there is write 1930. They've answered that question. The next one, how many people were waiting for Amelia's plane to arrive? When they're scanning, thousands of people were waiting for her to arrive, so they write thousands of people. When Amelia returned, what did New York City do to celebrate? When they got back to New York City, the city had a big parade for her. So they were able to answer that, right? They had a parade. We go back up to F, what university paid to have a plane built for Amelia? Paragraph 4 doesn't say anything about what university. In paragraph 7, it says, Purdue University paid to have a plane built for Amelia. So paragraph 7 answers that question, but not paragraph 4. So that's as simple as they just didn't look back to the right paragraph, which that's an easy fix. They just need to make sure they're looking for a 7 instead of, or no, screwed up, a 4 instead of a 7. But that goes back to reading carefully, taking the time, all that kind of stuff. Back here, this last question, this was one of the very last questions on the test. I found this to be one of the more difficult questions because not only did they have to read for details, they also had to kind of understand the main idea of the passage, and they had to make an inference. So they kind of had to combine 3 different skills that they've been working on, and on top of combining 3 skills, 3 difficult skills, and kind of understand over the picture. So Amelia Earhart's actions make her special person because she taught young pilots to take great risks. Kind of. It doesn't really talk about her making a risk. The improvements to airplanes and flying. Doesn't really talk about her overall making about airplanes and flying. Proved that women can make flying history, which is the correct answer. And throughout the whole passage, it keeps talking about Amelia Earhart being the first woman to do this, proving that wrong, blah, 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 going through. So they had to pick up on the details, that the fact that she was a woman, and they kept cluing in details about her being important as a pilot, as a woman, and created roles for pilots flying across the Atlantic. No one picked that because of the thing about that. No one mentioned her flying across the Atlantic once. So that was a difficult question. That's 68%. That's getting up towards 70. I was more okay with that one being 68 than something like this, which is pretty literal, where all they had to do was look at that one being 59%. That one they had to combine three very difficult skills for them to work on. So they just need to make sure they need to, and it's something that you need to realize as a parent, and they need to realize as a student. A lot of questions aren't going to be cut and dry, and I'm dividing these up into different skills. But a lot of questions aren't going to be just cut and dry, one skill. It's going to kind of combine the skills, and as we work through the year, they kind of combine the skills. Some questions are on the flip side as well as just a little bit of thing. It's kind of hard to figure out exactly how to best prepare them, but this is kind of what we do. So ways to practice for details. When you're reading with your child, ask them very specific questions about what they read, and I mean get very, very specific. Maybe if it said that the man had 13 eggs, finish that page and then tell them how many eggs did that man have. They try to tell you 6, tell them show me where it says 6. You make them prove their work. When we're doing guided reading, I ask them very specific questions, and if they can't answer it, I tell them, go back, you're not going on to the next section until you can answer that question and show me where you got that question. You just need to be very specific with them so you're gauging that they are reading from the details. You can give them a few things that happened on that page or that chapter or the section, and then ask which one did not happen in that passage, that paragraph, that section, whatever, however you're doing it. Good way to prepare them is if you're saying, give them 4 things that happened in the book and ask what happened on that page. So if you're reading a book, I'm just going to kind of repeat myself this one. You just say 4 different things and ask them what you want to happen in that chapter. So maybe you want to throw in something from an old chapter and just see how well they're paying attention and make them prove their work. Need to really practice the fact that not and accepts are going to be something that are going to be huge. Making sure every time they see not when they're going through reading quizzes, if you see that they did not circle or highlight or underline or do something to bring attention to the word not or accept, make sure they know they need to do that in the future, because that's going to be the only way that's going to be an alert, because it's not necessarily it's going to be capitalized, bolded, italicized. They need to pick up on those words themselves. And again, you can just use your daily routine for these, like right before you go to sleep, ask them, today we did all these things, except which one, and list 4 things. Try to trip them up, do something you did yesterday, do something you're doing tomorrow, kind of trip them up, do it like that. But basically, all these skills you can kind of work into your daily routine without making a big hassle. But yeah, the set and the not are going to be very important that they can do it. And if they go back to the question, the one, which question is not answered, when you're going over reading quizzes, make sure that they have answers written to all the questions. If they don't, basically just tells me that they guessed, which in fourth grade we tell them isn't. All right, so we're at the last slide. I do appreciate you coming in tonight. Make sure that you are using these strategies with the child. It's critical that they are reading and seeing you read every day. They also just very recently, probably within the last week or so, they released a new practice SOL on the Virginia Department of Education website, which is really exciting for me, because they back in 2010, they went over from the old standards to the new standards. The new standards are much more difficult than the old standards, but they haven't released any of the new standards tests. So what we had been using to prepare were old standards. Even though we're teaching the new standards, it's kind of difficult to understand. But now you can see a much clearer way of what they're going to see on the SOLs. You'll see a lot of things on the SOLs are questions that I kind of create for their reading quizzes, because I have used that. Before I turn off the video, are there any questions? Well, again, I do appreciate you coming out. if you go to the next slide on yours, this slide, and you press on the feedback slip, that'll give you the little exit ticket, if you will. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. Those of you who are watching on the video, make sure you are typing "I am now leaving" and put your name, just so I made sure that you watched the whole thing. So thank you again very much for coming out. I'm now stopping the video. If I can figure out where to.